white settlers in Kenya, So let me hope all of us will okay. We are going to look at the period when the British had entered into Kenya, taking over Kenya, dominating Kenya. So the white settlers in Kenya. So Europeans began to settle in Kenya in 1896, and a large number came in 1903. So Europeans started to occupy Kenya in 1896. However, a bigger number of Europeans gained interest in Kenya in 1903. So they mainly came from New Zealand, Britain, South Africa, Austria, and Canada. So their aim was to set up what we call plantation farms in Kenya. So in Kenya, the population of the white men from different parts increased in 1903 with the purpose or with the major aim or goal of setting up what we call plantation farms, where they were going to practice plantation farming. This is a time when Kenya changed from trade and this other kind of trade, and now they embarked on what we call cash crop growing after the British introducing such type of agriculture or farming or mode of trade in Kenya. So we are going to look at the white settlers in Kenya, and we shall see the reasons, the pushing and the pulling factors that made these Europeans to come into Kenya. And to begin with, factors for the coming of the white settlers in Kenya. One, the climatic conditions, especially in Kenyan highlands, were good, cool, and conducive for European settlement. We shall see that when we are talking about the Kenyan highland, we are looking at an area that was occupied by the Kikuyu people. It is the Kikuyu people that even spearheaded the Mau Mau rebellion, Mzungu Aludi Aende Uraya Africa Party Uhuru. This is the rebellion that the Kikuyu organized to push away the white man from their area. Remember, when the whites gained interest in settling in Kenya, they occupied in the highlands of Kenya. The highlands, these were the areas that were owned by the Kikuyu people. But because of the good, cool and conducive environment, these people ended up coming and occupied such areas. The climate was favorable. It was good for both human settlement and agriculture. So it made their settlement into Kenya inevitable. Two, very few Africans had settled in the highlands, and this perhaps the settlers settled in such areas in large numbers. So the vacancy of some of the African land in Kenya gave the white settlers an opportunity of settling in those unoccupied areas. Two, the Devonshire White Paper of 1923. The Devonshire White Paper, this was a white man paper that was signed between the British, who were called the whites, the Africans, and then the Asians. This is a document that confirmed, that gave the white settlers exclusively. The whites also engaged themselves in settling into Kenya by the document, that is the Devonshire White Paper. The Devonshire White Paper gave them the go-ahead to occupy Kenya. So this was also among the factors that pushed the white settlers to increase or to settle in Kenya. The Devonshire White Paper. We shall look at the Devonshire White Paper itself when we reach there. So the another one, Kenya had strategic advantage. So Kenya was strategically located. That made it easy for it to be accessed. It was easy for the people in Kenya to access the Indian Ocean waters and the well-developed transport network. So the position of Kenya made it easy for the white men or for the white people to come and settle in the area. Why? It was so close to Indian Ocean. Another one, it had well-developed transport networks that could make the movement of both human beings and the trade very easy. So that is also another factor that made the white settlers to increase or to occupy or to gain interest in KE. Another one, we have the construction of the Uganda rail line that reduced the transport costs, also paved the way for the occupation of the white settlers into Kenya. White settlers, after them, seeing that now the rail line was done. Remember, the rail line was established purposely to put an end to slave trade or human labor. After human labor becoming useless in the European countries, starting with America, Britain, where now they had got what we call industrial revolution, machines were introduced. So this time round, we are seeing the rail line being completed, and after it being completed, now time came when transport is easy. It is easy to exploit the resources. Now the rail line made them to come into Kenya, since it was now going to be easy or cheap for them to exploit Kenya. So the nomadic way of life of some of the Kenyan tribes like the Nandi, Masai, and the Kikuyu also made it easier for the settlers to obtain land. So nomads, these are the people who used to move with their animals from one area to another, looking for water and the grass or pasture for their animals. So with that character of the Kikuyu and the Masai, Nandi, among others, of moving from one place to another, it made them to leave their homes, their land back, to go, and they go to other areas where they hope to find grass or pasture and water for their animals. So when these white settlers saw the land that these people had left in the process of looking for pasture and water, they had to come and occupy such areas. So this made their settlement into Kenya inevitable. We have the colonial policy was also another factor that made Kenya to be occupied by the white settlers. So officially it engaged settlers to come in large numbers. We say the colonial policy was clear that Kenya should be a settlers colony, which officially engaged settlers to, encouraged the settlers to come in large numbers. So after declaring Kenya a settlers colony, it gave the white settlers an opportunity of coming in Africa to occupy what they thought that belonged to them after the declaration of Kenya as a white settlers land. So that is also one of the factors that made the occupation of Kenya by the white settlers inevitable. So another one, the colonial. So many of the governors in Kenya were too sympathetic to settlers, to the settlers' demand. Look at a man like Sir Charles Eliot. Sir Charles Eliot in 1902 to 1904, and Sir Donald. Sir Donald also contributed a lot. That is in 1904 to 1905. Donald Stratford also contributed towards the white settlers land in the white settlers settlement in the land of Kenya. So these people were too sympathetic and lenient to the white settlers. They felt sympathy to their demands and they had to accept them. Eliot and Donald Stewart and the others, they sympathized with them, accepting the terms and the conditions, leaving no option apart from them occupying the area. So we have the Anglo-Boer Wars in South Africa, 1899 to 1902 in South Africa. A number of African farms were destroyed, which forced many settlers to rush to East Africa, expecting to find the same prospects. So they thought that in East Africa they'll find what they found in South Africa. So the early reports made by the explorers and the men on the spot. Explorers, these are the people that used to explore, moving around East Africa, viewing areas with profitable resources, and then they gave reports back to their home government, making them come or rushing to Africa, thinking that what they were told by their explorers was right, and at the end of the day, some of them, they ended up colliding with one another. So another one, after World War catastrophe that took place in 1919, there was a period of resettle ex-soldiers. There was a period of resettling ex-soldiers, and therefore many of them ended up in Kenya as settlers after their retirement. So the desire to stop inhuman acts also led to the white settlers settlement in Kenya. If we say in the inhuman acts, we have one of them, that is the slave trade that was highly practiced in Africa, was replaced with what we call the legitimate trade, and also encouraged many white settlers to come in Africa. Many of the white settlers came in Africa to support the new mode of trade, that is the legitimate trade, which was characterized by growing of cash crops, the cotton, the coffee, the tea, the tobacco, among others. So we have many causes of the European settlement into Kenya, and though there is some, though there are many, as you may see down here, there are many factors for their settlement. So when we come back, we shall look at the problems faced by the white settlers in Kenya.